Hey, Heart Nation. Welcome back to Carla's channel, Heart to Heart Inspiration. I'm your host, Carla J. And we have some real stories that meet real transformation on here, as you already know. But today, imagine going from a prison cell to the pulpit and then seeing your life turned into a movie. That's the incredible journey of my guest today, Pastor Michael C. Robinson. He's an author, a spiritual leader, and a living testimony of how grace, grit, and God can rewrite your entire story. In this episode, we're talking raw redemption, divine purpose, and the powerful film that brings his life story to the screen. So get ready to be inspired, challenged, and reminded no matter where you have been, your story isn't over. So, without further ado, let's welcome Pastor Michael C. Robinson. Yay! Hi, Pastor Mike. How are you?
Well, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Carla J, and I really appreciate this exciting opportunity to be on Heart to Heart Inspiration.
Nice. Thanks for coming on. And just to let everyone know, we are live. And it's always when you go live, it's always something that may go awry. Like, you know, the the picture may get dark or the screen may freeze. So everyone in the audience, please bear with us. I'm telling you, because this is such a powerful story today. I told Pastor Mike earlier, the devil is just busy, just trying to get busy so we don't get his story out, his testimony. But the devil is a lie on today. So we're just going to keep on moving. So, Pastor Mike, I hope you can hear me okay. All right, here we
I can hear
go.
you, and again, I'm elated to be on your show.
Okay, so let's start off with the book. And but before we do that, I just want to say if you are watching, we are on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So if you are looking and you're calling in from any one of those, just feel free to put your name in the chat and where you're calling from. Let's see here. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I read, I'm reading the book
I think we're
and
having
I'm loving it.
problems being froze, but I'm sure we'll
Yeah,
overcome it.
pray, Pastor, pray. Yes. Hold on one second. Hold on one second. Hold on. Let's see. I'm going to add it back. Okay. Let's see if this is a little better. That's the only thing about going live. Okay. Am I still freezing for you?
No, you're great.
Okay, we're going to keep going. Okay, I've been reading the book. It is so good. I mean, you did a really good job. And the movie is good too. It's just as great. But there's some different things in the book, right? Because when you write a movie, you can't put everything in the movie. So I enjoyed reading the book because it gives a different perspective on some things. And I like how you talked about your dad. He worked at Chrysler, and he was a sharp man, I guess. He owned some after hour clubs, some spots. He
Um,
always had a Cadillac. I love
yeah,
that.
had a Cadillac every other. He had a Cadillac every other year. My dad worked at Chrysler Automotive Plant, and he also retired there. But on the weekends, he was a hustler. He used to um, shoot dice. He knew how to pad roll. He knew how to as he been dealing the hand because he knew how to uh, constantly getting calls coming in. I'm trying to ignore them. Nevertheless, my father, he had after hour joints back then. You know, after hour joints were places that people would go after hours, after the bar closed or whatever, what have you, and he would hustle and bring money in, and every weekend he was gone. So he probably was doing more than hustling too, because we didn't see him on the weekend. So we had a very interesting upbringing during those years.
And the book talks about it so well. I like how that you said that on the outside looking in, it looked like your family had everything. You know, your family, your dad was working, a hardworking black man, took care of his family and everything. And your mom, she was working as well, very smart woman. And it looked like, that you all were the textbook family. And, but it also, you gave that inside story. So today, it just reminds me of today. You could be looking at people. You always say, things don't always look like what they appear. And you talked about in the book, the devil shows you the other side, but not. No, the devil shows you what is your saying? I'm getting it all confused.
The devil will show you a pretty picture, but he never show you the other side.
Yes, yes. That is so true. So I gotta
Yeah.
just go through some of the parts in the book that I was like, OMG, they had my mouth open. Um, because I really can relate to this. You know, you talked a lot about the abuse that your mom suffered and that you all suffered too. Now, in the movie, to me, it didn't really show you all getting really, abused, but you said your dad would beat you all mercilessly.
Yeah, he did. And years later, actually about 10 years ago, I just realized the fact that my father, he was in the Korean War and he was drafted at the age of 18. It was a story he told that he walked through this field for days, him and other soldiers, and all you could see was dead, disassembled bodies, and all you can do is smell death all the way through there. I say that to say, I made complaints about how my father would beat us unmercifully, but at the same token, you got to understand he was dealing with post-traumatic stress himself, because when you are 18-year-old young kid or young man and you get drafted into the service, there are some things that you seeing that he feel that didn't even wasn't even on the same level of the way he was beating us. So that probably had a lot to do with him being raised as a young man and him trying to raise us as strong young men.
Right, right. I'm sure it did. That's a good
Hmm.
point that you're making. And just actually being in the military itself, it's a lot.
Right, right.
The structure, the things that you see and go through, that's a lot too. I'm glad that you shared that. And I really like how you talked about your mom, in the book. You told us about her education and that during this time it wasn't really ideal for women to work outside the home. And I remember hearing stories of my grandmom, work being a stay-at-home mom. So you had mentioned that in the book, and I
Mhm.
said, that's right, that's true.
Yeah, we stayed in a middle class neighborhood with ease. We were the young kids at age 10, and 13 years old. We had mini bikes. We had Swedish net pants, gabardine pants. We were living the epitome of nice dressers back then. So my father was a nice dresser. My mom was a nice dresser. So they really um, kind of hypnosed us in the mind because of the fact I struggle with that now. Everything that I wear and have to be the top of the line. And I wish now I didn't come up like that, but you kind of get in that vein, and now here it is.
Yes, yes. Well, you know, I I used to I used to do, I'm a nurse, and so I used to do home visits. And one of the things that sometimes I would go into, maybe not even middle class neighborhoods, but poorer neighborhoods. And they always, some of my clients would say, I take pride in dressing my children nicely because I don't want
That's good.
anybody that's looking at them thinking that they're poor. They always want them to look good.
Right,
So,
right.
you know, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
you have it. It's in your blood. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, my mom she was the first lady I saw wearing Gucci bags and back in the day. So, that's just what she did. She had like four mink coats, mink stoves, and my dad, he wore alligator shoes in the 70s. So that's just how we were raised at the time. I think I was 10 years old. I got my first suit from Saks Fifth Avenue. So uh, I don't know if that was good, but it kept us to be more so well dressed men. I'll say that.
Yeah, yeah. And that gives you swag too, I'm sure, as you have experienced. Women always like a well-dressed man. They could I this is a funny story. I remember working before I became a nurse, working in I forgot the name of the store. It's no longer around. But this guy, he was so fine, and little did we know at the time he actually was using bad checks.
Mm,
But nobody paid no attention to anything he was doing because they were just mesmerized by how well he looked. So, when a man is dressed well, a lot of times women do fall for that. And sometimes it could be their downfall as well, because they're not really looking deeper. But
right,
that might be a
exactly.
whole nother show.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that we have been taught by the Caucasian society that we have to play by all the rules to achieve the American dream. But the people who make the rules, they don't apply by the rules. So they do other things to achieve the American dream. And I just don't see that you can do everything 100%, dotting your I's, crossing your T's, and you're going to really get wealthier, experience wealth in that area. I think you have to become at some point an entrepreneur or somebody that has something else going on other than just the 9 to 5.
Right. And even with that, sometimes as an entrepreneur, you have to, got have some money saved up, and of course you meet the right people or person, but you got to have a connect sometimes.
Yes, without question. It's not what you know, it's who you know. Yeah.
Right. So so much involved in that. But yeah, they sell you this, just do that, and really it's a lot more to it. It is a lot more to it, because if you solely just depend on a 9 to 5, when they decide to let you go, look at what's happening now. People are getting let go left and right, you
Right,
know.
with no pension and anything. Um, but let me get back to the story. I want to explain the fact that I was um a young 16-year-old kid. Me and my father, we didn't never had a great relationship at all. I was the middle son, and I suffered with chronic asthma from the time I was born till I was 10 and a half years old. So by me suffering asthma, I think by my father being an excellent athlete, he played baseball, football, basketball, he could box, he could ride a bicycle backwards, he could just do everything. And
Wow.
he helped invest in all the kids in our neighborhood. But by me having asthma, I think he probably was disappointed for the fact that I couldn't do the things the other kids could do. So
Hmm.
I became living with the stigma of being a slow learner, but I really wasn't a slow learner. I really would just be able to connect with things on a later level because when I was 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, I couldn't run from your house to the house next door without having an asthma attack. So
Hmm.
I was 12 years old when I made the first basketball team I made, and the guys eventually on my team, were all state, all city in Detroit, and I sat on the bench. I was 12 years old. My father criticized me, but I was glad that I made this team. We won the championship. So
Hmm.
sitting on the bench, only playing 3 or 4 minutes a game, I felt that I really achieved something. I accomplished something big, you know.
Right.
So and throughout the course of time, dad was very physically and verbally abusive to my mom, you know, and I've seen this. I've seen my mom getting waken up by getting punched in her face, and I've seen my mom um, had knives up to her, and I've seen her go through a lot of um, unnecessary, I believe, abuse. But my father was somewhat jealous. My mother was a very attractive lady at the time, so wherever she go, my father felt that it was somebody trying to mess around with her. But at the same token, my dad was cheating on my mom, so maybe he
Right.
had this in his mind that if I do it, maybe you'll do it. So I
Hmm.
don't know. I can't figure that out. But nevertheless, we had a very, very bad relationship. Actually, they separated from when I was about 10 and a half to 13 years old. And when they got back together through the vehicle or the avenue of the church. My father had got saved, and he my mom and my younger brother was staying in Ohio, and he just so happenly caught her at her mother's house, and he
Hmm.
began to have a friend of his to converse to my mother, and she wanted the family back together again, and that's how
Hmm.
we got back together again. So he was never physically abusive to her again, but he was very verbally abusive to her. So
Right.
I believe that could do just as much damage or even more than
Right.
being physically abusive to a person.
Oh yeah,
So
definitely. It plays in your mental, you know. Um, definitely does that. Pastor Robinson, you are a pastor now. And so what would you say to someone? I know in the film it has a young lady coming in with her son, talking to
yes,
you, talking to the pastor. What would you say to a woman who comes in and is telling you that her husband is abusing her?
I really don't think, and I am divorced. I was married for 18 years, but I don't condone divorce at all. Nevertheless, I think that two people always can work it out. But if someone is in an abusive relationship, I think separation is a must because someone can literally get hurt or lose their life. So for a time period, for a season, I will encourage the both of them to make a separation until they can start the union of the marriage all over again.
Hmm. And that's interesting that you say that because, like you said, that's a whole nother topic that we could talk about. But because you're a pastor and you experience a lot of these things, it's just interesting to have your perspective on it. You know, um,
Mhm.
Also in the book, and I'm sorry for the loss of your brother, Tony.
Thank
Um,
you.
and, how is Cordell doing?
He's doing great. He's a manager at General Motors. He went to University of Southern California, where he was highly recruited in basketball. My brother's 6'5", so he played point guard all his life in school, and he was highly recruited. He was all state for 3 years in high school. So he, my father wanted to live his dream through my younger brother because we knew that he was destined to get to the NBA, but he just got hurt. He hurt his back during the wrong time of his career, so it kind of turned everything around. But he's doing great. He's a supervisor, or actually a manager at General Motors. He had just recently had back surgery. They found a big tumor in his back, and he was in
Wow.
a wheelchair. Then he was in a walker, but now he's moving around pretty good. He's not 100% back to himself, but he's about, to me, I believe he's about 75, 80% back normal. And he have a son that's 16 years old that's a great ball player, so he may be able to see his dream through his son.
Mhm.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad that he's doing okay and recovering,
Hmm.
praying for him and the full recovery and his son. One thing in a funny moment in the book, was that your mom went to the store and she told you all not to open the door, but your
Oh,
brother opened it for the waterman, and
mm.
you all were howling and barking.
Well, we was in my mother. We were getting in my mother's closet and scratch and bark on the door and sound like dogs. We could really sound like dogs too. So we could really make the person that was in the house so fearful that they gotta do the water, check the water, and get out of there as quick as they can because we scratching and making a lot of noise. But that was just some of the things we learned from my dad. My dad, he had a lot of game. We call it game, I guess it's common sense, but he knew how to run game on people. He knew how to do things. He never sold drugs, but he was a flat foot hustler. That's when people um, um, do cards and dice and shoot pool and do all that, but do everything but sell drugs. So that's who he was. Yeah,
I love that moment in the film where he is shooting. They're
yeah.
shooting dice. So they're shooting dice. They're shooting dice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what they didn't put in the film, he really knew how to put the dice in his hands. He showed us as kids, and he'd flip them and do that, and he knew how to pad roll, so he can pad roll. I know it's gonna be a seven, so I know how to outsmart these guys. And they used to put juice in the dice, and juice would be that's why the guy said there's something in those dice in the movie because if you put a beer can on the end of the table, it's gonna flip it to make it be a seven. So it was
Oh,
all kind of ways back then to allow you to cheat, and he would cheat against very well-known hustlers. So he was actually putting his life on the line. A lot of times he would go out in the streets.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're right about that. Putting his life on the line. I know a woman. She lost both of her sons playing dice. Both of them playing dice. Yeah, but that's some you throwing out some nuggets right there, Pastor Mike.
My mother knew how to read the cards. She couldn't mark the cards. So it was times that she would be playing cards at the hour, and she would know that the deck that was already marked. So they would wonder, how was this woman winning these games instead of folding? But she knew what was in the other person's hand because I could see that this is exactly what my husband be doing. So
Right.
my mother, she been around a while too. I tell you this, and I was put out the house. I was staying in a hit house. In the movie, it showed that I'm shooting this junkie or heroin addict in the foot, right?
Hmm.
Well, technically speaking, that was my job. The people would come and shoot drugs in the house, but at the same token, if there were veins where they couldn't find, because they would have so much tracks on their arms and their legs. So it was my job to shoot them in areas. I'll get paid $2 to shoot them in areas that they could not reach their vein in their back, in their
Wow.
behind, in the back of their neck. And it was just like the most, I think, even today, the most filthy, disgusting job anyone can take because it's not like you coming to a drug house and you gonna take a shower to let somebody shoot you some drugs.
Wow.
So so it was a horrible lifestyle. I seen people OD. I seen people as an early age. I began to see people get shot in the head
Mm,
because they're young and they really don't really know nothing about the game, which I didn't either. And I could have easily lost my life and getting robbed by dope
right.
fiends and drug addicts and everything. So it was a very, very abnormal world out there. And I thank God for the grace that He had upon my life to get me to this point because I look back over the years and there were many, many times that I look back, I really could have, should have, would have lost my life, but it was God's grace.
Yes. All right now. Pastor Mike is
Yeah.
coming out. Coming out right there.
So in the midst of it, I began to think and contemplate. I said, I'm going to either have to learn how to sell this stuff, or one day I'm going to be on it, or one day I'm going to end up losing my life. The only way I can elevate, I'm going to have to learn how to sell this stuff. So I began to be a very well-known hustler in Detroit. I made a lot of money, a boatload of money, and 85. I was 20. My brother was 22. He got shot 7 times in the face with a 45 caliber handgun and lost his life. 5 years later, I got shot 5 times. My mom was with me. I got shot once in the head, once in the chest, twice in the arm, once in the foot. Now, what the film didn't show, what the movie didn't show, is that I literally laid on top of my mother because I was in the she was in the in the line of bullets, and I just saw the gunfire come from the gun, and I just went and dove on her because I felt I was going to lose my life, but I didn't want her to lose hers, not knowing that God sent an angel to cover us both. So I just thank God for His grace, His mercy. Then the very next year, I went to penitentiary. I was sentenced to 7 years, 3 months in the federal penitentiary. I got out in 6 years. I think it was 9 months, and then I did 79 days. So it was really a little over, or about 7 years if you add it all together. And I thank God I met this. I thought it was the Lord. I promise you I did. I had met a cartel from South
Mm-hmm.
America, and he was going to give me 1,000 kilograms of cocaine a week. That would
Mm.
have put me at no less than $10,000 a week, right? I
Wow.
mean, 10 million, I'm sorry,
Can,
$10 million a week, right? So
what?
I'm in the back of my head thinking like, wow, when I get out of here, I'm gonna buy some high rises. I'm thinking of all this kind of stuff. I'm gonna get houses in other countries, and God just allowed the federal government to raid my mother's house during that little season. I got her house got raided 6 months later. I did and was calling to connect in Colombia. In the movie, it said I never made the call. Well, I really was making the call because I was excited about it, and God intervened and
Mm.
stopped it. And
Wow.
I just said, Lord, when the day they raided my mom's house, I just threw my hands in the air. I said, Lord, if you get me out of this, I'm finished because
Mm-hmm.
I felt if I had to retire from McDonald's or Wendy's, so be it. I
All
just
right.
don't want to keep going back in and out of that penitentiary. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
I faced life on 3 different occasions. And I say all this to say that I really was in the streets. I'm not a pastor that's telling you, yeah, I sold a little weed, I sold a little cocaine, I did this. No, I really was out there. I seen people just like we looking at each other lose their life right next to me. I
Mm.
thank God that, I'm here. I almost lost my life on a few occasions, but God spared me. And back then, I didn't think it was God. I thought it was something I did. But now I really know that
Mm-hmm.
His grace is
Come on.
really sufficient.
All right now.
Yes.
We're about to have church up in here. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it because that's a true testimony. You said, don't get it twisted. I wasn't just doing a little thing. This ain't just a little hype. I was living this thing for real.
Yeah, real
And
talk.
10 million? Come on now.
Yeah, and I turned it down, walked away from it, and I just thank God. But I'm glad I did because I probably the money would have been coming too quick, and I just came home, and I would have had to prove to the world again that hey, I'm back, and I would have bought unnecessary things, and the feds
Mhm.
would have been right back on me. And when you got money like this, I'm just being honest, you
Right.
can move people out your way if you know what I'm talking about
Oh,
at
yeah.
any given time because
That's
you got
right.
the money and you carrying the spirit of pride where you think you're untouchable, and that's just the
Right.
truth.
Right.
Yeah.
Money is power. Money is definitely power,
Yes, it
but like
is.
you say in your book, doesn't mean that that power, you might think like you a God with a small g, but really, it's the devil just working, it's just
Yeah, it
evil
is.
forces, you know.
It is.
Um, I want to take a minute to just give some shout outs from the group chat. You got Tamika Davis, Tamikia Davis. Forgive me if I said your name wrong.
I
Uh,
know Tamika Davis.
all right, Michelle Coles. Hey, Michelle, my sister. We got Big Dog Blake. We got Travis Grant. Hey, Travis. He's over there in Detroit,
Hey,
doing
what's
great
up,
things.
Trev?
Yes, yes.
Thanks for tuning in.
And then Shanice said, build some strong legs to walk away from that type of money.
Oh, Jesus, tell me. I mean, there was times I was saved. And you know, this is the funny thing about it, Carla J. And believe me or not, I was I just moved. Um April the 1st, I moved into a condominium in another city, right? Um Next to the city of my church, right? And I was packing stuff, and do you know I found a black phone book that I had when I was incarcerated. And in the phone book was the information, the number, and everything of this old cartel connect, right? And I just looked at it maybe for about 5 minutes, just looking. I said, wow, I mean, I couldn't call it now. He probably think, what you calling me for now? You done got in some trouble? Are you snitching or doing something like that? But I just was looking at the number. I said, oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Wow. Oh my goodness.
yeah,
Well, you are showing that when you really do pray and say, God, if you give me out of this, because I know I done did that a couple of times, and,
yes.
and sometimes you do fall back. So, you just being real right now. And one of the things also um, that I want to ask you about. You talked about your grandmother Alice. God rest
Hmm.
her soul in the book, and she ran numbers. I love that,
Yeah.
and I'm saying I love that in a good way. Hey, Tam telling tales. Hey, another. She
That's
doing
who
big
that's
things in,
that's who
in
I'm
Detroit.
interviewing with tomorrow. Tell and
Yes,
tell.
yes. Hey,
Yeah.
Tam.
Hey
um,
Tell.
your grandmother ran numbers, and so I was reading this story. So my aunts are reading the book too, and so we were talking about it.
Oh
And
wow.
I said, what do you mean about running numbers? And my mother was cracking up. She said, your great grandma used to they used to run the numbers, and was runners, and they named all the people in the neighborhood. It was so funny. That was in the book, and then actually we were talking about it. So that was a funny part to me. But your grandma Alice, tell us a little bit about her. She played a big role in your life.
Alice was big mama to our family. I can almost cry by just talking about her. We had the Thanksgiving dinners, the Christmas dinners. She would cook 8, 10 sweet potato pies. She would have the ham, the roast, the turkey, and she just laid it out for us. And that was just the house where all of us would go over there and spend the summer at, and we would have pallets on the floor. You probably remember that. We'd be sleeping next to each other, and she kept the unity in the family. I mean, she was amazing. And then the grandson that she loved the most was the one who was in the serious amount of trouble during the time. That's the
Mhm.
one she always gave favor to, but she
Oh,
showed love to all of us. When she wrote the numbers, my uncle was the number man to come get them. And it's so funny because the police would ride down the street, and my grandmother look out, and we didn't know at the time, but they not looking for you. She shoot the numbers up under the sofa and put everything nice. I hope they don't come in here like they gonna raid her house, but it wasn't like she was on that level. You know what I'm saying? But even at 6, 7 years old, she would put like if you hit, she would put the $80 or $120 in our pocket and say, "Now, when you get over to Conda J, she gonna give you some money, okay?" I said, "All right." So we'd walk over to your house, and then you would give us $5 or $10, and we start fighting each other. And, no, I'm going, Grandma, I'm going. Because so they was really indirectly, they didn't know they was breeding us to be hustlers at the time. You
mhm.
know what I'm saying? And
Right,
they
right.
didn't know they was innocently doing it because my whole family on my mother's side, all of them sold drugs. I mean, I had cousins. He made a great, large lot of money out in the streets of Detroit. Two brothers, they made a lot of money. Um,
Mhm,
um, my other cousins, he made money. It's just we just
mhm.
was street people, and a lot of
Right.
us got killed, and
Ooh,
thank God that I'm here to be able to tell my story. I was asking God years ago, I said, Lord, well, why did you take me through 20, 25 years of challenges, ups and downs?
Mhm.
Why was my life like that? And the Lord spoke to me. He said, so you can talk to some young kid for 20 or 25 minutes so they can
Mm,
detour their life into the right direction.
right.
So I just thank God. Yeah.
I'm telling you. That's awesome. Because you do wonder, why God? And
Yeah.
all the time, it's not a sweet story at the end, but it takes a certain, I don't want to say a certain level in God, but really to understand it, because you could have been making 10 million a week. You might have said to yourself, but I could have built some boys and girls clubs to help,
Exactly.
instead,
Without
you
question.
know.
You know. Yeah. But you know, God had to put you in a position to keep you humble and keep you in an area where you're gonna always put him first. A friend of mine just lost his life. I worked for him for a while when I was in the streets. He had crazy money. I mean, one of the biggest drug dealers out here in the city of Detroit. I've heard um through other entities that when he got sick, he said, "Hey, I'm an atheist, so if there's a hell, I'm going." I mean, he's an older guy, but
Hmm.
that money, it's hard for you to minister to someone when
Right.
you making those large sums of money. For example, Oprah would not going to receive me telling her about Christ because she feel I'm in a whole different bracket. Michael Jordan not gonna
Yeah.
sit down and receive Christ from me. The only way that he would or she would, unless they were dealing with some sickness, some disease, and God will use me to heal them,
Right.
in some kind of way. Now I listen, but money, it is indeed, the love of it is indeed the root of all evil.
Yeah, definitely. It
Yeah,
could definitely take a turn for the worse. So I like in the book how you really talked about, the cost of freedom. You made some good analogies there, saying that all of you all were looking for
mhm.
freedom in the wrong places, but really Jesus paid the price for your freedom. I
He
like that.
did. And when you're in the streets, you always giving out money, you're always helping people, you're always trying to build lives that the people that you're trying to build is destructing it and tearing them down. And I know this is gonna sound like it's crazy, but one of the first times I felt freedom when I was incarcerated.
Mm,
Although I was bound physically, but in my mind, I was free because I felt I can do whatever I want to do without trying to impress anybody. I
that's
didn't
deep.
do good in penitentiary. I went in and out the hole over about a year, year and a half because I couldn't get along with the system. I got 6 disciplinary transfers. I maxed out at a disciplinary institution, and like the last 7 months of my time, I really began to focus myself, and I
Mhm.
said, well, let me um, really live for Michael. I'm not living based upon my reputation or what people think I would do. Oh, Mike, he gonna holler at him. He gonna do this. No, Mike gonna do what Mike wanna do now. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Yeah,
That's interesting. You felt the most freest when you were incarcerated. That's deep right
yeah.
there. That's a word right there.
Because everybody pulling on you in the world.
Mhm,
I mean, nobody want to be incarcerated. Let's not get it
mhm,
twisted because you put aside and you away from what we call physical freedom. But at the
mhm,
same token, a lot of people tell you that. I got a friend that did 28 years in penitentiary. I got a guy I didn't know him before, but he just got out 2 weeks ago. He did 47 years for a murder he didn't commit. And
mhm.
they really could say, I don't have no influences here. I don't have the the
Mhm.
problems I had out there mentally. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? When you're incarcerated, you get the best psychological treatment that you can possibly get in the world because I can look at you and tell that there's something wrong with you. And I say, come on, man, let's walk the yard. And we walk the yard, you talk
Mm,
about it. The next day, we walk the yard, and I can keep talking to you until I talk you out of it. Because if I don't converse with you, if I don't show a true friendship with you, then you're gonna go stab somebody up. You're gonna go do something,
mm-hmm.
go hit a guard up, or do something that
Right.
that's gonna cost you more time or mess your life up or whatever. So you need that. And the best psychological treatment I ever got and mental illness treatment I ever got was when I was incarcerated.
Wow. You just spoke a word right there. Out there, the Heart Nation. Hey, Heart Nation. I share with you. I worked in a jail. I worked in a jail for over 10 years, one of the
Hmm.
largest jails in the US. And they used to call me Nurse Smiley. And it was you just really made a good point that I never thought of. I always like, why are they going crazy over this? I had my medicine cart, and the guys would draw art for me to post on my medicine cart, and
Hmm.
it really brightened up some of their days, and they would really say, nurse, we really enjoy, we appreciate that because that's giving us hope. It's an outlet. I didn't understand it, but I was happy to do it. But you know what,
Right, right.
the white shirts will say, you can't keep doing that, can't keep
Hmm.
putting that on
Hmm.
your cart, no. And I'm like, why? It's
Right.
but so many other things, are happening. But you just really made me understand it, and that was over 20 years ago. But because it's psychological, because that's something.
And you don't just don't know what a smile will do. I never went to church when I was incarcerated. I went to church about 8, 9 times throughout my duration in prison. But the only reason I would go is because it would be outside church coming in.
Mm,
And you just don't know how good it made a brother feel to be like, did you see a girl that was singing in the choir that had on white? Man, she was smiling at me. Yeah, she liked me, man. But, it's just the things, the small things, because you just meet the small things that we are ungrateful for out here that you
mm.
be grateful for when you're in there,
Wow, that's so
Yeah.
true. So true, so true. Pastor, do you go back to the prisons now and speak? Because you have a lot of things great to say, and I know mentorship and all that with your congregation. Is that something you do too?
I've been struggling with it for years because um, they look at your record, they don't trust you, they think that you got something other than ministering to the inmates. But I'm glad you asked me that because out in Washington County, in the county that I'm in now, the sheriff, the head sheriff, called me into her office, and she said she had a meeting with all of the ministerial staff that's in my city, right? And she said, I'm wondering why you didn't come to the meeting. And she said, you're not a part of the Ministerial Alliance? I said, actually, I'm not. I said, when I first started pastoring, I wanted to be a part of it. I said, but now I began to notice I'm not. Michael Robinson personally not getting on a bus that's not moving. And I said, I don't really associate, but with a small fragment of pastors. And she said, wow. She said, I want you to be my personal advisor, and I need you to help select the people that I want to make chaplains to go into the jail. I said, well, I've been incarcerated. She said, that's why I'm selecting you because I think you got a heart for the people.
All
So
right.
I really appreciate that. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, yes. Divine order. It all works out. Okay. And I know our time is winding down, but it's
Hmm.
still some great nuggets in the book. You talked about rebellious, and one thing I really want to talk about real quick. You touched
Hmm.
on something that hit a chord with me. I never heard of this term, but I'm telling you, when I tell people, I am so tired of hearing men say, I want a woman that's going to be submissive to me.
Hmm.
It seems like it's a trend out, men saying that. You watch Pop the Balloon. You gonna be submissive? To who? To you? What you doing? I mean, that's just me.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's not biblical. That's just me. But you gave a word to it, bibliomancy. Tell me about that. I know I'm saying it
Bibliomancy is when I'm using the scriptures to control you. That's witchcraft. You
wrong.
follow me? I've seen my dad do it oftentimes with my mom, and eventually I had a real strong mother, but eventually it broke her. You know,
Mm.
maybe I'm not submissive. Maybe I do have a Jezebel spirit. Maybe, you know,
Ooh,
and you keep hearing this. So I'm using the scripture, and the scripture is true, but I'm using it to
right.
control this individual. So that's witchcraft. It's like me taking a um a dial and I'm poking the dial
Mm.
in the areas where if this person keep hanging out with that person, they slide gonna keep hurting. So
Hmm.
they gonna stop hanging out with the person because it's jabbing the person in the side. So I'm saying that means I'm controlling this individual. And that's what
Wow.
bibliomancy is. To take the word of
Bibliomancy.
God, as many pastors do that today, to control the leadership, the membership. Yeah.
Right. Wow. I thank you for bringing that to light, because that really struck me. And then you took the pills, you drank the bleach. I mean, you were really
Yeah.
feeling that rejection.
Yeah. Real quick, a lady about 6 years ago, maybe right before COVID, she was on drugs, and we was looking for a guy that was lost, and he had one of our cards from the church in his pocket, but he was at the hospital unidentified, right? So they called me and asked me. So I went and got this drug addict and asked her to ride to the hospital to see if she can identify him. And she said something very powerful to me. She told me her brother killed herself years ago. And I said, well, I tried to kill myself twice, right?
Mm,
And she said, were you at home alone? And I said, no. And she made me think. She said, you weren't trying to kill yourself. You was trying to get some attention.
mm,
And I said, that make a lot of sense.
mm-hmm.
I'm crying out for attention.
Right.
So I slit my wrist. And when I slit my wrist one time, it's right here, I saw the blood start shooting out. So I got scared. So I really
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to die. I just wanted the foolishness to stop. You know what I'm
Mm,
saying? When I took the pills, my father dared me. I did it by mistake because he told me, you ain't swallowing. So I drunk some water to prove that I took them. I messed around, swallowed by mistake. Nothing happened. So I drunk some bleach. I started throwing up blood, and now I'm scared. I don't want to die. I just want y'all to
mm,
stop doing what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? So she
mm-hmm.
made a good point, and I thought about it and it made all the sense in the world. Because if I want to kill myself, I'd do it right now while I'm at home alone. You know
Wow.
what I'm saying? Can't nobody stop me.
That's so true. And then I could talk about this book all day, Pastor Mike, but I know our time is winding down. I want to get into the movie. Um, that how so now, and you getting out of prison and how that was, and how you got to be the pastor. But tell us about when you got out of prison and what happened and what led you to writing your book.
Well, I was trying to write a book, but I was incarcerated, and I was going to use the book as a scapegoat to why I'm making X amount of money. I didn't know books didn't not make a lot of money, right? So I was trying to write against the book. So I wrote down a lot of notes, you know what I'm saying, all the time when I was incarcerated. But then I tell you, I hope I can tell you this quick. In 2000 and no, 1998, a prophet prophesied to me. He preached a powerful message about Joseph in prison and all this, and I just thought this guy was really a man of God. It was only about 300 people at this big mega church, so it was real intimate because it was during the 12 o'clock noon service, and he preached this message. He said, now I need um people to give $1,000 to pour into this ministry. So my faith went from here to here. So okay, you're hustling now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people put money in the envelopes, and then he said, I got seven more left. And he said, I need 7 people to have enough faith to come get an envelope. And I went up there sarcastically, if God gonna give me $1,000 to put in this ministry, he gonna have to bless me about 10 or 15,000, right? I didn't have a pot to use to put restroom in at the time. So I went and got one of the envelopes and he prophesied in my life. He said, you're gonna write a book and it's gonna bless this nation and touch young people around America. And this was in 1998. I published my book in 2018, 20 years afterwards. 7 years after that, now it has become a movie.
Wow.
And I got to find this pastor, this prophet, because I really want to sow something in his life. I want to, just to let
Okay.
him know that you was on point, man. This is a um, 7-year-old prophecy. Now
Wow.
it's beginning to come to pass.
Wow. Look at that. I love
You
that
know,
story. And now you got that. And how did it become a film?
I met a guy named Joe Smith. He's an amazing guy. I met him through a lady that go to my church. She had me on a podcast named Carmen Evans, and she introduced me to Joe Smith. And Joe Smith, out of all the movie directors in Detroit, he's saved, he's born again, and his integrity is impeccable. And he said, "Man, I can turn this thing into a movie." I said, "Well, let's do it." So I was excited about it. Yes. Yeah.
That's awesome to get approached and how someone said they want to write a story about it.
And now I'm preaching the gospel, Carla J. And in my church, a lady had blind eyes, God opened her eyes. The lady had deaf ear, God opened her ear. Many people jumped out of wheelchairs from strokes and very other paralytic situations. Over 100 people, not from my ministry, but 100 people have been healed from stage 1, 2, 3, 4 cancer. We seen legs that was 3, 4 inches shorter, and they grew out in the church. We seen the most miraculous things I ever saw in my life. God do it right in my ministry. We used to have healing services once a month, every first Sunday until COVID got here. But we're about to start back. So God has done some amazing things in my ministry. So I got
Wow.
to serve him. I got to praise him. I got to give
Well,
him the glory.
that's worth any amount of money, right? That's worth it.
Yes.
Tamikia said, "Amen, amen," and give a shout out to your church, to your ministry.
Yes, I thank God for Ypsilanti Community Church. I believe that we have the most powerful, anointed, wonderful church that's in the state of Michigan. So I just thank God for all of my membership. I thank God for my leadership team, my intercessory team. And I just ask you all to keep the faith because God is doing contend for the faith. Yes,
Wow.
ma'am.
Yes, I love that. All right, now, I every time I see that word where your church is located or the name of the church, I'm like, I cannot pronounce it. So I'm
Ypsilanti, Ypsilanti. I can't pronounce it that good either, so don't feel bad. Even when I asked, when we received the offering, I said, if you making a check, just pay it to YCC. Don't even try to spell. It got too many consonants in the wrong place.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. And what time are your services? Do you broadcast or is it just in person?
Yeah, we have it on Facebook, but it's 11:30 Sunday, and I promise you, we are the church in the heart of the city with the people in the city within our heart. So you all will enjoy us.
I love that. That goes right along with heart to heart inspiration. All right.
There
I
you
love
go.
that.
There you go. You got to invite me back.
Of course. Yes. I got so much
Okay.
to talk about. But I want to always ask my guests, what is one quote that you're living by today?
One quote that I'm living by today,
Yes.
it's in Philippians, the fourth chapter, the 13th verse. I
13.
can do
I know
all
you was
things
going to say it. Okay. I
through
interrupted you. Go
Christ.
again.
I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I really believe it.
Yes. 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 I
Yeah.
love that. Pastor. This has been so wonderful. And again, I got to have you back on. I hope you enjoyed yourself. We got started a little rough, with technical difficulties, but God.
God worked it out, but God. Yes, ma'am.
All right, Heart Nation, we thank you all so much for joining us. And you can I'm going to put the name of the church in the comments and your services or website, and they can find you all. Where can they find you, Pastor?
I don't know my website, ypsilanticommunitychurch.org. I don't know, but I put it on there
All
before
right.
the end of the day.
Thank you. And one of our guests said that's her favorite quote, Philippians 4:13. Yes, I can do all
Yeah,
things through
we on one accord, kindred spirits.
All right. Thank you all. I'm going to end our live. Thank you all again. God bless. Take care of one another and take care of yourselves. We'll talk again
Thank
soon.
you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. God bless you.
God bless.